The draft is coming up very quickly next week, and there's no way the Chargers will be able to fill all of their needs. But in Daniel Popper's latest mock draft, getting into all 7 rounds, I think we've gotten the closest thing to perfect yet.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. And we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to everyone for making us your first listen today, and we appreciate the everydayers out there. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, the draft is coming up, and it is very important that the Chargers go out there and they fill as many possible needs as they can. And today we're going to get into Daniel Popper's mock draft, and man, did he do an excellent job of going out there and getting impact talent early and getting guys with great traits that you can bet on late in this draft.
I 100% agree with you. I think the other thing, too, is just an emphasis on trying to get guys that are Jim Harbaugh guys, which is obviously what we're looking at too. But today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Daniel Popper, the best beat reporter on this planet covering a team, in my opinion. I mean, I think he does such a great job. Came out with his mock draft 3.0 for the Chargers, getting into all 7 rounds. We're going to be doing our own 7-round mock draft, but we wanted to bring up this one because we think he did an excellent job. And if you're not subscribing to The Athletic already, I highly suggest it. We're going to kind of go over how we feel about the picks that he made in all 7 rounds, but there's much more that he gets into and why he gets into them on The Athletic that you can check out. But the reason I think you start to love this, David, is because in this scenario, it ends up being 3 quarterbacks that go 1 through 3. Marvin Harrison Jr. goes at number 4. Chargers have a chance to trade back. Instead, he stays put. He takes Malik Nabers, and he gets one of those top 2 receivers we've been drooling over in the entire offseason.
Yes, so happy about that. This is one of the outcomes that I wanted. I know it's an outcome that you want. The Chargers desperately need to add premium talent to their wide receiver room. Right now, it's a barren cupboard. There's not a lot of guys in that room that you really trust, that you feel like Justin Herbert can get the ball to on a down in and down out basis. And so when you get a guy like Malik Nabers, who absolutely lit it on fire last year in college football, I think that's something to get very, very excited about. And then you finally have that young separator, that young beast to pair with your superstar quarterback.
Yeah, and the deep threat, we've wanted since the rocket arm Justin Herbert has taken over, just on the surface level. But this is a little snippet of what Popper had to say about why he made this pick. Nabers is the exact type of receiver the Chargers have been missing for years. Notre Dame tackle Joe Alt could be an option at number 5. He's number 5 overall in Dane Brugler's rankings. I should not see him as the same level of prospect as Nabers, and Joe Ortiz was taught in the best player available school of thought during his time in Baltimore. Couldn't agree more. And to me, when it comes down to taking one of those top receivers or taking an offensive lineman at 5, I just think there's different levels to it. I just think that Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr. just clear Joe Alt, even if I can sit here and say he's the best tackle prospect in this draft. So I totally agree with Popper there. And we would lean going in that similar direction if the draft fell exactly the way it did in this mock. So one of the things we love, there's a lot of reasons that we do love Malik Nabers as the 5th overall pick. Not only because it gives Justin Herbert his best deep threat that he's ever had, but this is, to me, what makes him special, right? Can make the tough catches behind him, low throws, never misses a beat, can keep in stride and keep going after the catch where he is awesome. Can make people miss, fast enough to create bad angles, gets up to full speed in the blink of an eye, and he's also an elite ball tracker. I mean, the over-the-shoulder catch he had against Alabama, who have a great secondary, and he still lit them up, was insane. I mean, on the sideline, over the shoulder, insane catch. But there's so much to like about his game, David, and I don't think that he can totally fill what you're missing now with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. There's no player that you could, right? But I think it makes a huge dent in that, and at least the feelings of it. You lose those 2 good players, in Keenan Allen's case, a great player, a Chargers lifer. You get somebody who has all the skills to be a wide receiver 1 at the NFL level kind of day one.
You absolutely do. I feel like he's got decent size at 6 foot, 188 pounds. The biggest thing for me is he's an effortless separator. This guy can get space in no time, and it's all over the field at each spot in the field. The short, the intermediate, and the deep parts of the field. He's always open. He's like 7-Eleven. I mean, you just throw him the ball. Yeah, there's a good chance he's going to be available to catch that ball. He's able to also catch the ball in traffic. He's a big play machine. I mean, 14 touchdowns, 18 yards per reception last year. And that's just exactly what the Chargers need. They need a Jamar Chase. They need one of those guys that can make plays and make something out of nothing. That is what Malik Nabers brings to the table, and it's something that, like Daniel Popper said, has been desperately missing from this Chargers offense for a very, very long time.
And you get a very inexpensive player at a position that's very, very expensive, right? Even as a first-round pick, what wide receivers are making, I mean, he's going to make, $35-ish million over the first 4 years. You look at what the top of the wide receiver class is making, close to $30 million, and have a chance to pair this year with Justin Herbert. Yeah, exactly. And that's what he's going to make over 4 years, right, before the fifth-year option kicks in. I think the other argument here, too, is, hey, we know Greg Roman wants to run the ball better. So does Jim Harbaugh. So does every single coach on this staff. They want to be more physical. This is a dude we've talked about before that can help that. It's not just because he's a good run blocker, right? You have to play them differently if you have someone like Malik Nabers. You can't have those safeties creeping up close to the line of scrimmage. And I think when you look at the Chargers rosters of the last couple of years, one thing that's desperately hurt the running game was the lack of respect that other teams had for deep threats on the Chargers because of their speed. He helps you with that, and I think actually opens things up in the running game as well in a kind of an unconventional way. Round 2, pick 37, another pick that we love here, a guy that we've talked about often as a potential guy in round 2. Mike Sainristil, the slot cornerback from Michigan, the top slot corner in this draft, and somebody, David, who obviously fits what Jesse Minter wants to do. I think the fit here is perfect. The need is obviously gigantic, so it's another one of those situations where you feel like you're getting decent value here, a guy that deserves to go in this range of picks, and also filling a gigantic need, which is why we love both the first couple of picks from Daniel Popper.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of when the Chargers were able to select Asante Samuel Jr. It just felt like that was a pick that always made a ton of sense for the Chargers, and this is another situation I feel the exact same way. Obviously, he knows the defense. He just played for Jesse Minter at Michigan, and not just played, but played at an extremely high level. This guy plays with incredible effort and attitude, which I love. He played inside and outside, probably going to be more of a slot corner in the NFL. He's a very strong tackler, which I love. I think it's a huge part of being a corner in the NFL, and it's very important for the run defense. And this guy can bring the hit stick. Don't let the size fool you. Mikey Sainristil will put you on the ground, and he will enjoy it. And I love that. Like I said, he has that attitude, and I feel like that's something that can be used on any defense and any team, but I feel like it's best suited for the Chargers.
Especially when you're trying to turn to a team that values those kind of things, and you want to be a more physical team. And I think if you're talking about one of the only downsides to him is his size, but I think he makes up for it with the way he plays the game, the edge he plays with, the chip on the shoulder he kind of plays with, and from what you hear coming from the college ranks, like one of the biggest leaders on this team, right? One of the guys who is an alpha in that room, even as a guy who's like 5'9", 5'10", right? For that dude to be barking orders to someone like Chris Jenkins or some of those other giants
but
he
it's
was
in
around,
the heart.
It shows you he's got that dong in him. I mean, when you watch him, you see that. Oh, and by the way, the dude had 6 interceptions last year. And, and is crazy with the ball in his hands, too. Baby. Has a chance to score every time he gets it, right? So I think if you're looking for playmaking ability, you're looking for physicality, you're looking to try to fill a gigantic need, even though this isn't the outside cornerback position. In Jesse Minter's defense, what you're going to see most of the time is a 4-2-5 defense with a nickel on the field. Nickel is a starting position now, unlike what it was, maybe when it was lesser valued in years past. That guy's going to be on the field all the time. And right now, the Chargers have 2 dudes on their roster, and Jasir Taylor and Asante Samuel Jr., that were both benched trying to play it last year. So I think the fit is great. I think we know, obviously, having seen him in Jesse Minter's defense, what to expect from him. And I think this is one of the better ways it could start for the Chargers in round 1 and round 2. And I think both of these guys have a very realistic chance to make it to these picks as well. But now, where do you go from here? And I like how Daniel Popper addressed not only the 3rd round pick, but both of the picks in the 4th round as well, because the Chargers have 5 picks in the top 110, and they have to do really, really well with him, especially if they're going to try to contend this year. So we're going to get into the defensive tackle that he went with in the 3rd round and the rest of his 7th-round mock coming up right after this. First, I need to tell you guys about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. One of the reasons I chuckled there a little bit is just because, I feel like my wife right now, not being at work because she's home on her maternity leave taking care of our child, like sometimes when she's sleeping, she'll just be like, LinkedIn Jobs, that's how much she misses it because she's a recruiter and she hasn't been able to use it. But the one thing that she consistently told me about LinkedIn Jobs is just the quality of candidates that you get and how quickly you get them, right? With LinkedIn Jobs, it's not just another job board. You are finding someone who's going to be the right fit. And whether you're talking about your business or a football locker room, the right fit is so important. And if you get it wrong, it can really change a lot of things. And then you're right back to square one trying to find someone to fill the spot you already thought you filled. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring for a reason. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, let's get back to this Daniel Popper 7th-round Chargers mock draft, getting into all 9 picks that the Chargers have upcoming next week. Next Thursday, Locked On NFL mock draft premieres tomorrow as well, so you can figure out who we ended up taking in round 1. And I'm excited for everyone to give us their notes on that. And we'll also have a little draft primer coming out for you guys tomorrow right before that as well, that I'm really excited about. So make sure you guys are subscribing to Locked On Sports Today, where that live stream is going to happen. But let's get into round 3, pick 69. A nice pick, David, especially for someone that we're talking about potentially as a 2nd-round pick. Feels like he has slid a little bit doing kind of the consensus mock drafts and the consensus big boards. Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle from Florida State, one of the guys that we've already talked about a little bit, and I like him. I mean, maybe not as much as a 2nd-round pick, but it's kind of like Tuli last year, right? Where we didn't love him as a 1st-round pick, really liked him as a 2nd-round pick. I think I feel the same here with someone like this, who Daniel Popper basically said, hey, if you're looking for energy, if you're looking for toughness, if you're looking for these things to kind of make you the Justin Minter, Jim Harbaugh type of team, this is a guy you want on it.
Absolutely. Braden Fisk is like a shot in the arm, an adrenaline shot in the arm.
Super athlete.
Unbelievable. I mean, freakishly athletic. This guy has a 9.97 RAS score, which is the 6th highest ever recorded.
Yeah.
So this guy is
thousands, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just unbelievable. Very high motor player with a very quick first step. Position flexibility, played inside and on the end, and had good sack production. 6 sacks in each of the last 2 seasons for Braden Fisk. In the 2nd round, I'm not a fan. In the 3rd round, I absolutely love it, and I feel like he would come in right away and add some juice to that Chargers defensive line.
Yeah, and Daniel Popper said he thought about taking a tackle here, and he still might go that way in his final mock draft. So again, make sure you subscribe to The Athletic to get great content from Daniel Popper. But the Chargers want to beef up the trenches, right? And we've talked about that. Daniel Popper talks about that. Jim Harbaugh talks about it ad nauseum, right? This is the way you do it. It doesn't always mean offensive line. And I think when you just have someone like this who uses his quickness and power already as a pass rusher, that's gotten him those 12 sacks over the last 2 years, you can think about how much better he could get with this coaching staff potentially, because like we've talked about before, you'd rather have someone where you have to rein it in, right, and kind of dial it back a little bit and be a little bit more refined than to want to bring it out of them to begin with. Don't have to worry about it with this dude. Plenty of chase down blocks, explosive off the snap, really, really good motor. The only thing really here, really short arms, and kind of, that hurts him not just being able to kind of stack and shed blockers in front of him, but also just trying to make tackles, right? Because it's hard being a defensive tackle, getting off blocks and making, tackles on tiny running backs that are skirting through the holes. So love the pick in round 3 at 69. Round 4 is a guy we hadn't really watched before. Pick 105, Ray Davis, the running back from Kentucky. We ended up talking about Braden Allen. Braylon Allen. I think I'd rather have Ray Davis. I mean, after watching him today, I really, really liked what I saw from Daniel Popper's 4th round pick.
Yeah, Ray Davis has some more breakaway speed. Definitely
more juice for sure.
Yeah, more juice
electric.
than Braylon Allen, no question about it. I feel like he had good vision. I feel like he hit his holes when they were in front of him, had good patience, but understood where he was trying to go with it.
Yeah.
Also had pretty soft hands. I feel like this is a guy that can be a factor in the receiving game, took a couple of screens and really, made a lot out of them.
Watch the Louisville game. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a lightning rod as a rusher and as a receiver. That wheel route over the shoulder touchdown that he had in that game is super impressive for a running back.
I mean, and I think that's more of the compliment that we might see is, having already having that hammer in Gus Edwards. Bringing in a guy like Ray Davis, I think would be a nice compliment to him. Also, I feel like he takes very good angles and he understands his blocks. He understands where he's supposed to go.
Yeah.
I really liked what I saw from Ray Davis. I feel like this is a guy that can come in right away and get snaps and get touches every single game to kind of spell Gus Edwards when he needs it.
Yeah, and another dude who's smaller, about 5'8", he's not going to break the scale either, but at the same time, doesn't run that way, right? And I think he is a good compliment for Gus Edwards, who's a hammer, like you said, north and south runner. Get what you can get, I think, on every snap, right? And I think that's one of the things that Ray Davis brought to the table that I really liked, which is just knew when to bounce it out and knew what to just get when he could, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of college running backs struggle with, just because it's like they always want to break it out to go make a big play, or they don't see the opportunity to bounce it outside and get more and just start running into offensive linemen in front of them. I think that Ray Davis did an exceptional job of just knowing when and where to try to break it outside and make it a big play, and know when to just put his shoulder down, because he is a guy who finished runs. He is a guy that brought some toughness to the table. Kind of like, Austin Eckler in a way of like, hey, he always ran a little bit harder than his size would kind of suggest, right?
Yeah.
I think Ray Davis has a lot of that to him, but a better in between the tackles runner, and someone where you look at that, Kentucky offense running a pro style offense. They're running a gap scheme. They're pulling guys. He knows exactly kind of when and where he should kind of leave guys in the dust. I wanted to bring up a picture because I had a picture, but I wasn't sure if the NCAA would like crack down on me or something, where like against Louisville, he just absolutely left someone on their butt, and then they were just kind of like reaching behind them to like just like there he goes. I think he brings more juice. I do think he's a better compliment for someone like Gus Edwards, and just I don't know if you only want kind of plotters, slower guys at that running back position. I think you want a little bit of both, and I think
you need some diversity in the room.
Yeah, I think you do, and I think this guy would really help as a pass catcher too, which is not Gus Edwards' strength so far.
No.
But round 4, pick 110. A very familiar pick because it's a guy we ended up going with our mock draft Monday, where we did our full 4-round mock draft on Monday. Hunter Norzad, the center from Penn State, and this is what Daniel Popper had to say about it. I was looking for a long-term center option who could both challenge Bradley Bozeman and have a chance to start at guard as a rookie. Norzad is a fit. This is great, and I love that point, which is why I brought it up, David, and something we didn't talk about as much, but a guy that has a ton of versatility, right? Not only could he come in, and potentially even challenge Bradley Bozeman for his center starting spot, but at least brings you some competition. So potentially a long-term center, but also potentially you get some dividends in his rookie season, even as a 4th-round pick.
Hey, the more positions that you can play at an adequate level, the more valuable that you make yourself. And I think that's extremely important when we're talking about Hunter Norzad. 20 starts at right, or 20 games at right tackle, 13 at center, 7 at left guard, 1 at right guard. So he's played all over the offensive line. Also, very technically proficient, only flagged 3 times in 24 games at Penn State, like we talked about the other day. Like I said, he constantly keeps his head on a swivel in pass protection. He's a very thick, has a very strong base, has good recovery power, and I feel like he's dangerous when he's climbing to the second level. I mean, it's definitely something that will be impactful and something you're going to see. I'm expecting to see in the new Chargers rushing attack under Greg Roman. You're going to have guys that are pulling, so you can get those big guys in there coming through the hole to clear that thing out, so you can get Gus Edwards into the intermediate part of the field. And I think one of the only drawbacks here is, he was a 6-year senior. He's a guy that's already a little bit older. He's 24 years old. So that's something probably why he's pushed back into the middle rounds. But I like the pick. I mean, I feel like this is a guy in the 4th round here that fits perfectly. The value's there. I think this is a strong pick.
I do too. I mean, I think the cool thing with him is you see the high football IQ of a dude who went to Cornell, but then went to the Big Ten, went to to Ohio or Penn State, and started playing teams like Ohio State and played teams like Michigan, and still played really, really well. And I think that kind of tracks great for what he can be long term, and just how he kept continuing to raise his level of play. I think he's going to be a really solid player wherever he ends up. But how can the Chargers do well in the later rounds? And one of the themes that we're going to be getting into today is just betting on trades and filling key depth spots. And I thought that Daniel Popper did a great job. So we're going to get to the rest of the Chargers picks that they have. 4 more draft picks to talk about and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, so I need to tell you guys about Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, you lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches in the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly that you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. And there's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. You can make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. And you can charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends if you want to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Dave, we have 4 more picks to get to here from The Athletic's Daniel Popper, giving us his full 7-round mock draft 3.0 that he put out on The Athletic a few days ago, and I think he did a really good job. And at the end of the draft, you have a lot of needs. You're probably not going to be finding starters, so you're looking for traits, guys who can develop, and you're also looking for guys that can play key roles as depth players early on in their career. And it's kind of a weird time because there are so many older players because of COVID and how kind of the restrictions change. But maybe you're getting more mature players that won't take as long to kind of develop and to pay dividends for you. But I do want to tell you guys to make sure you're checking out tomorrow the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Live, April 17th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So as you guys are hearing this, it's going to be tonight, streaming on Locked On Sports 24/7, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. We will also have a primer getting into exactly how we were going to attack the first round, right? Trade strategies, who we were looking at, what could get in the way of the Chargers getting the players they want, and so much more. So make sure you guys subscribe to Locked On Sports Today and check out the first ever 24/7 sports streaming channel, getting into the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Live, April 17th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So we are on round 5, pick 140, and you're going to love this name. I was just going to say what his name is according to Dane Brugler, which is Jeffrey, but I'm going for it. Edefuan Ulofashio, the linebacker from Washington. Definitely said that one a few times before I got in here. Thank you to Dane Brugler for giving me the pronunciations, because that is terrible when you're seeing some of these names. So this is what Daniel Popper had to say about this. We know that linebacker is a big need for the Chargers, even with bringing in Denzel Perriman, Troy Dye. He said, Chargers need more bodies in this room. Ulofashio played Mike at Washington. He's aggressive in pursuit of the ball and has solid awareness and coverage. I think the aggressive in pursuit of the ball is the one thing that absolutely jumped off the page to me. I mean, this is a dude who sees it, shoots it, gets in the backfield, make plays there, solid tackler. I really liked what I saw from this guy, David. Maybe a little bit smaller, but for a guy you're getting in the 5th round, I think there's a lot to like.
Yeah, 6 foot, 236 here. I feel like he plays with strong effort. I love his pursuit, like you mentioned. I think that's one of the things that is very obvious when you're watching him. When he sees it and he attacks, and and he goes to go bring the ball carrier down. And also felt like he did a pretty decent job of getting off of blocks, which is very important from the linebacker position. You can't get off blocks, you're not making tackles at the NFL level.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because he defeated blocks, right? It wasn't always stacking and shedding. I think he'd made it hard for offensive linemen to really grasp onto him, and I think that's one of the biggest things he had. But just defeating blocks, beating guys to the spot was something he did really, really well as someone who's super athletic, I think, for the position. And this is from Dane Brugler as well, which is awesome. His last name means not afraid of war, which I think is very fitting.
That's awesome
for what Ulofashio brings to the table. So I like him. A guy you're getting late. Looks like he's going to be a special teams demon as well. Not getting a guy who could start right away, but it's always hard for linebackers to transition to the next level. Look at the first round linebackers that have been.
We saw that with Deion Henley last year too.
Yeah, Deion Henley, but I'm even guys with much higher pedigree that are taken in the first round. Like, it takes a while for college linebackers to get to the next level. So maybe you want Junior Colson, someone like that, but if you're going to wait, I like the guy he ended up going with. Round 6, pick 181. We'll speed it up here. Evan Williams, the safety from Oregon. And here, David, I think this feels more like a backup to a Derwin James or a Alohi Gilman. Dane Brugler actually compared him to Alohi Gilman more than kind of getting that rangy free safety that would be kind of a better pair with the guys they currently have.
Yeah, Evan Williams here, 5'11", 205. I felt like he's a very effective blitzer. I feel like he's a decent tackler. Better in coverage in the short and intermediate parts of the field here. And then this is from Dane Brugler. He says he's an energetic field presence with a trigger and toughness that are easy to appreciate. He projects as a backup, strong safety, and a core special teamer. And we know that adding assets and getting guys for special teams is something that you have to do. That's a key part of the game. You can't just be defense and offense. You have to get guys that can make an impact on special teams as well. It makes a tangible difference.
It definitely does. And I think for him, yeah, I mean, you're like you're saying, you're not going to get a starter. I do like the way that he triggers upfield. I think, agree with you. That's where he's at his best, when he can get downfield, see what's in front of him. One of the biggest knocks against him is kind of just when his back's turned, when he's trying to make plays deeper on the field. He wasn't great there, and he didn't have a ton of production that would, dissuade you from thinking that. And what I saw from him was a guy that, probably should be closer to the line of scrimmage, takes good angles in the running game, a decent athlete, 8.2 RAS score.
Yeah.
4.640, though, lets you kind of think, hey, a guy that should be closer up. But yeah, good as a blitzer, 2 sacks against Colorado, good timing on the blitzes. Let's get to the next one here. 2 7th-round picks because the Chargers get a compensatory 7th-round pick, but they have pick 225 as well that they just have had. And they went with a cornerback, double dipping at corner is something that we definitely like, David. I forgot to look at the pronunciation. I'm going to go for it. Chigozie Anuzium, right? I'm going to say that. Cornerback, Colorado State. This is what I really enjoyed from Daniel Popper here in kind of his thought process when he said, when I asked Minter about outside cornerback traits in February, he said we want that size-speed combination. Anuzium, 6'1" and ran a 4.39 40 at his pro day. He has translatable press man skill set and a frame that's translatable to the NFL level. To me, David, this kind of screams Michael Davis, right? We talked about it a little bit before the show where it's like his biggest problem, not getting his head around, didn't have the production in college, only 1 interception. But this is a kind of, hey, get this guy and mold him into what Jesse Minters wants because he has the physical traits to potentially be something.
Yeah, and hey, when you're in the 6th, 7th round, you're trying to get guys where you feel like, you see something that you can use. You see tools that you think you can mold and that you can kind of bring out and kind of refine. And This is what Dane Brugler said in his scouting report. He said, Anuzium's lack of on-ball production is concerning, but he plays with an edge, and he has the height, weight, speed blend that is coveted by NFL teams.
Yeah, and he also said, Anuzium is a classic press man corner who wants to jam and use his length to attach himself to receivers. The game looked like it was slowing down for him at times last season, but the main question remains his ability to locate and play the football. And as we saw with Michael Davis, that is something you can get a lot better at, right? So I like that, Daniel Popper going in, double dipping, adding guys that could potentially fit what Jesse Minter wants, even though there's no way you'd expect him to get meaningful playing time as a 7th-round pick in his rookie season. But someone to kind of push, some of the other late round picks like Jasir Taylor and Dean Leonard as well, probably Dean Leonard specifically, given both of them playing outside corner. But there's room in that room, right? So it's not like, any of those guys is immediately on the bubble, even if they take 2 corners, because they're just going to need some guys. But last pick of the draft, the compensatory pick, round 7, pick 253, Miles Cole, Texas Tech, an edge rusher, David. The main thing I liked here from what Popper had to say, competition for Chris Rumpf. Chris Rumpf can't have a stranglehold on this. And I don't know if this guy is a 7th-round pick is going to come in and bump him off right away, but I do love the thought process of, hey, we need an edge in the future. Maybe this guy can turn into something because I didn't get to address it earlier.
Yeah, well, one thing is for sure. Miles Cole doesn't have to worry about graduating from being a string bean to being a full stalk of broccoli, okay? Miles Cole is 6'6", 278 pounds, so he has that prototypical size and weight that you want on your edge. I feel like
37-inch arms, which was shocking to read. Which is 37.
That's redonkulous.
Yeah,
that's bigger than most offensive linemen. And
Tito was good, and his was like 34 or 35, and we're like, damn, that's good arm length right there. We're talking about 37 for this dude.
Yeah, I mean, good competition for the backup. I think definitely is a big factor in this. The height, weight, like I mentioned. He definitely needs to do a better job of securing the edge from what I saw.
Yes.
And he needs to develop more pass rush moves. But again, we're talking about 3 picks away from Mr. Irrelevant
Yeah.
here. So you want to get someone who has those traits that you look for that could possibly turn into more later.
And you're betting on your new coaching staff to be able to develop guys like this who obviously have obvious traits. 8.53 RAS score. You're getting an athlete 4.67 40 time at 6'6", 270 is not bad either. Great explosives, vert, broad jumped, crush those, poor agility grades, which makes sense. My thing, pad level was atrocious, right? Raw from a move standpoint, just didn't have a plan enough of the time, I think, going to kind of what you were saying there. But as a guy you're getting with the last pick, totally see why they would end up taking someone like this, a guy that they could potentially develop, a guy that fits some of the traits that Jesse Minter wants from his edge rushers, and a guy that could turn into something down the road potentially, and getting a guy that fits an obvious need in the future with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa heading into the last year of their contract. So thank you to Daniel Bomber for putting out great content, and as always, we love what he ended up doing with the help of Dane Brugler from The Athletic in this 7-round mock draft, and we'll have our own 7-round mock draft next week. But make sure you guys check back in tomorrow because we will be putting out a little draft primer for the Locked On NFL mock draft that's going to be happening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So it means 6:50 Eastern time. We'll have a little special thing for you guys, a little draft primer. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe and follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on our social media. You can find it on my Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, David at DroTalkSD, and the show's page at Locked On LAC, as well as on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. So we still have Fan Mail Friday and more coming up this week. Maybe a little draft sleepers if we can find some guys to maybe talk about later. I would like to do something like that because the draft is coming up. This baby has kind of sped everything up. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.